So who here believes in ghosts? Does anyone not believe in ghosts? Does anyone just not care?
Has anybody ever actually seen a ghost?
So I personally do not believe in ghosts because I feel there's just no logic or evidence behind it.
I definitely believe in ghosts. I think like super cool if they were real. I think there's like a lot of evidence and like different ghost stories that I don't think come from just like better.
I do believe in ghosts. I don't have any personal experiences with it, but a lot of my like close personal family members and friends have. So I believe it.
I do believe in ghosts.
I don't believe in ghosts. I think there's a lot of evidence, as she said, but I also think there's a lot of science that can explain that evidence.
So today we're going to be talking to you about some factors about ghosts, such as science, history, and some false information about ghosts. And first, I'm going to talk about the evidence, like the false evidence, the media, technology, and my personal experience with ghosts. So first, personal experience versus evidence. Many people claim that they have came encountering with a ghost, but in reality it's just an illusion and there's no proof behind it. They have later stated that they may have been seeing things or something like that, and there's just no real logical reasoning behind that. Next, the media. Ghosts were never really like a popular discussion up until recently because it wasn't really in the media very often, so no one really paid attention to it. It was never really controversial. It mainly began when the TV shows started airing, and one of those first TV shows was Ghost Hunters was like among the first, and that aired in October 6th, 2004. And shows like these and other ones began rise in the controversial about ghosts, whether they're real or not. But these shows there are many of them, but they never find true evidence of ghosts. They just think that they do. Next, I'm going to be talking about the technology used to discover ghosts that ghost hunters use and so forth. According to live science, pretty much all technology they use is proven to be ineffective since day one of trying to find ghosts. All this equipment is very expensive and pretty much not useful at all. And some of this equipment includes gauger counters, electromagnetic field detectors, ion detectors, infrared cameras, sensitive microphones, and yeah, these never truly work. Next, I'm going to talk about my personal experience with ghosts. It is said that West Hall is haunted, and I live in West Hall. I've been there for 4 months, and I've walked through the tunnels, which are supposed to be haunted many times, and I've never seen anything sketchy or ghost-like at all, ever. So if something's strange in your neighborhood, probably don't need to call Ghostbusters.
Okay, so my name's Marissa. I'm just gonna talk about kind of like the history and like background behind like ghosts and like how this all kind of came to be. So like, what is a ghost? That's a very big question. So ghost lore has been along for like a super long amount of time. It's believed that like the first sort of mention of like a ghost came from the late 16th century, and it's kind of from the ancient term Gast, and that's kind of like modern German, I guess. So you could say like 16th century Germany is where ghosts kind of came from. And for some time, ghosts has usually signified the disembodied spirit of a deceased person. The concept of a ghost, also known as like a specter, there's like 1,000 different words you can use for ghost, is based on the ancient idea that a person's spirit exists separately from his or her own body and may continue to exist after that person dies. Because of this idea, many societies began to use funeral rituals as ways to ensure that the dead person's spirit would not return to like be around and haunt the living people. So another thing I found, all of my information is from history.com, by the way. It was some early ghost sightings, so these are just kind of like the first sort of instances that people have recorded of some sort of ghost interaction. So in the 1st century AD, a Roman author, Pliny the Younger, recorded one of the first notable ghost stories in his letters, which became famous for their vivid account of life during the heyday of the Roman Empire. Biden reported that the specter of an old man with a long beard rattling chains was haunting his house in Athens. So that's one thing, is that like ghosts kind of come from different noises and visions and stuff like that, which I'm sure we'll cover later. And then centuries later, in 856 AD, a ghost that caused physical disturbances such as loud noises or objects falling or being thrown out was reported at a farmhouse in Germany. And the poltergeist tormented the family living there by throwing stones and starting fires, among other things. So ghosts that start fires probably isn't a good thing. And I don't know, it seems a little bit hard to explain to me. So there's lots of different varieties of ghosts, as I mentioned. Like trying to get through this part, but there's many different terms and they all have different meanings. So two sharply contrasting beliefs about ghosts have long been around, and a lot of the time they're like in the same society. There's usually like a good ghost versus a bad ghost, and it all relates to like the higher spirit of the person that passed away. So a lot of things that come up when people believe about ghosts is that like some ghosts are dangerous or like torment people, and some people believe that this is actually not the person's actual soul, but it's like some sort of like dark doppelganger sort of thing, or like a higher soul that is turned evil. And the two opposing ghostly prototypes are angry ghosts, because they're just angry about being dead. I mean, it's kind of understandable, and that usually comes from like being killed in an unacceptable way or something, so they want to like stay around and finish what's up. And yeah, so the last sort of thing I have is that there's many different encounters with ghosts that you can look up. I've actually went on the tour. It's called the Queen Mary in Palm Beach, California. That place is supposed to be like super haunted. You guys are nodding. You know what I'm talking about. I thought it was super cool. I didn't see any ghosts. I keep looking at my camera roll hoping I took a picture of a ghost. I don't think I did. But it was like super cool to see. And that kind of made me get more into ghosts and stuff. So according to lore, there is more than one way a ghost can present itself, obviously. The visual is kind of the big one, where people like see a ghost. Visible ghosts are often elusive, appearing only in glimpses, but some linger. So like you might see it out of the corner of your eye and like turn, and then it's like gone already. So it's kind of hard to like see all the time. And specialists in folklore and paranormal phenomena tend to speak instead. Apparitions include ghosts of deceased persons, but can also represent living people who are physically absent, animals, objects, and unusual beings that resist classification. Phantoms can also include visions of either a deceased or an absent living person. Specters and shades, terms seldomly used in the 21st century, so like Reece said, ghosts are definitely becoming more like a modern phenomenon thing. These refers to like ghosts and spirits. So some ghosts are heard rather than seen, like poltergeists. Poltergeists are classified as like noisy ghosts who are notorious for like dragging things on the ground, dropping dishes, or even like hurling things across the room. So you wouldn't exactly like see the ghost, but you like see objects move or hear things. Unseen spirits that communicate by rapping on walls or tables became especially popular during the heyday of spiritualism. And in reports of haunted houses, poltergeists are usually the chief like surroundings in the house. I know I'm from Billings, Montana, and there's a house there that's supposed to be haunted, and it's like really creepy. And there's definitely ghost stories there. One thing that is kind of more hard to explain, like there's not really like proof or anything, and not even ghost stories, is that sometimes you can just like feel a ghost presence. Like sometimes you just walk into your room and it just like feels weird and off. So this sort of presence is kind of the most common type of a ghost related experience for most people. Most commonly among the recent understandings is that these visitations often take the form of a sense of the deceased uncanny presence. Interestingly, the pattern found in the late 19th century is much the same as current reports. The more recent the death, the more frequent the incident is. So basically, like a lot of people have different ghost stories about like family members. Like, oh, if this family member passed away, like you start like, I don't know, having different ghost stories about them. So yeah, I'm now gonna pass it off to Abby, and she's gonna talk a lot about like the technical aspects of it.
Okay, hi, I'm Abby. I'm going to be talking about defining a ghost versus a spirit, how a place becomes haunted, and how ghosts try to communicate with people. So the big difference between a ghost and a spirit, a ghost is defined as souls of people who have passed, but they're still attached to either a person, a place, or a thing. Ghosts have unfinished business and try to get the living to finish it for them so they can make a full transition to the afterlife once the task is complete. And a spirit, on the other hand, is also a soul of a deceased person. However, they made the full transition right away, and they can come and go as they want or completely disappear. So a spirit, a lot of people see spirits as like butterflies flying around, and it reminds them of their mother or different things like that. But a ghost is actually attached to someone or something. And then a haunted place. So a place that's considered haunted just says it has a strong negative emotion. And the primary factor in that is like the building or the area. So just because it's a building or an area, there's also like the people or items inside that could be haunted. So a lot of times like homes, museums, nursing homes, and abandoned places are haunted. Museums usually just because of the items. If the ghost is attached to that item, it'll move around with them. And although a lot of people consider a cemetery a haunted place, it is not, because that is just where the body lays, and that's not where your soul actually is or where it's attached to. And that also applies with active hospitals and morgues. And then for communication, the most popular is the electronic voice phenomenon. And this detects ghosts trying to communicate with the living through sound. And so the sound could be like static or white noise on the TV or radio, but it also picks up on audio tapes when you're like filming area. And according to liveabout.com, this mysterious voice are not present at the time of recording, but only when the tape is played back. So that's pretty spooky. And then other ways ghosts try to communicate with you are cold spots, which is kind of like what Marissa was talking about when you go into a room and it just feels really odd and eerie. It's considered a cold spot. And then sounds of things being dropped or broken. They're trying to get your attention to see them or help them finish their tasks so they can move on to their afterlife. And then lights flickering on and off, or just being shut off or turned on randomly. And then doors opening, closing, locking, anything like that. There's a lot of different ways to try to get your attention in just everyday life. So now I'm going to pass it off to Duncan, who's going to talk about more of his personal experience with it.
Well, to expound more on what Marissa was saying about the history of ghosts, the definition of ghost, according to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the 11th edition, ghost is a disembodied soul of the dead. However, these spirits have been long spotted way before the 1800s, the 1700s. It's been spotted way back in the Sumerians, the days of the Sumerians, the day of the ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians. They were more familiar with the dead coming back for their loved ones, for one reason or the other. But on a more personal note, my grandfather died when I was 6. At age 12, I was in my room just playing around, and I saw a figure of my grandfather walking across the room, or across my door. And I got up, ran to the door, and nobody was there. Now, this happened when I was 12. Fast forward to nearly 20 years later, and the same sighting of my grandfather has been seen nearly 200 times. The same person, the same body, the same spirit is moving around the house. There's another occurrence that happened. I have a neighbor in Florida who, her husband died about 6 years ago, and every day she would complain that her husband doesn't allow her to sleep. That he's in the house, he's making noise with the dishes, he is just walking up and down the house. And after getting frustrated, after about a few months, she got frustrated and she moved out. She moved in with one of her neighbors, and she got a house sold, and she moved away from the neighborhood. Now, this is a belief. In my country, they say belief kill, belief cure, where it's all a belief. But in my occurrences, I do believe that there's ghosts. No pass down to society.
From orbs in photos to videos and pictures of actual ghosts getting caught on camera, alleged ghost sightings are here to stay. If you're like 18% of Americans, you likely think that you have seen a ghost. However, the most likely scenario is that you're currently in a building with low ventilation and you're suffering from high levels of carbon monoxide, and you may have carbon monoxide poisoning. A few very common symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning are agitation, visual disturbances, and hallucinations. All of this could lead to an individual thinking they have seen something that they haven't. A popular ghost argument in favor of ghosts is proof that ghosts have actually repeatedly been caught on camera. And nowadays, with cameras being everywhere and everybody has one in their pockets, it seems very likely that that we would constantly be flooded with pictures of ghosts with the millions of newly departed souls each year. A researcher in the early 1900s by the name of Vic Tandy was doing some research in a lab that was completely unrelated to ghosts and the paranormals. However, after some time, Tandy and his colleagues noticed that there was an overwhelming feeling of depression, dread, and occasionally a cold shiver. In one occasion, Tandy saw the presence of a mysterious dark figure. But when Tandy turned to look at the figure disappeared. Tandy had grown to suspect that the lab was haunted. However, through further investigation, Vic Tandy and his team discovered that the instances that were seemingly paranormal were actually because of a fan that was vibrating at a frequency of 18 hertz. The 18 hertz is just below the audible range of a human's ears, and this frequency it tends to make a person feel uneasy with a sense of depression, or I guess eeriness, kind of like the feeling you guys were talking about when you walk into a room. So the fan vibrated at a frequency of 18 hertz. This also explains the dark figure he saw, because 18 hertz can also resonate with the structure of an individual's eyeball, causing them to see blurry stuff in the corner of their eyes. That can cause you to see weird blurs. And before I pass it on to Duncan, I want to remind you guys, if you've seen a ghost in your house, get out, because there's a good chance you might have carbon monoxide poisoning.
All right, today we talked about the history, science, and the false information of ghosts. History has different views on ghosts. With advancing technologies, maybe one day, just one day, we can find more solid evidence on ghosts. I'm concluding, today's the 13th, Friday the 13th. So I would watch my back while I'm walking outside. Thank you.